First, welcome our dear guest, live here in the studio, Dr. Hala, Enara, our political analyst. Thank you very much for being with us, ma'am.
You're welcome.
And we are going to start, as I said, from Al-Ahram, and it's tackling the incidents which took place recently in Al-Minya, the house of the family, and the problem of Al-Minya incident. Pope Tawadros says that the story has a criminal nature. Copts say our Muslim neighbors preserved our wives and children. A rumor and some stalkers ignite the fire. Al-Minya governor and representatives from the house of the family in the village of Al-Karam. And upon the president's orders, the state is to fix the 3 houses that were damaged. Still with the same issue, but this time from Al-Masri Al-Yawm, where we continue to read. Father Macarius says, we refuse the traditional reconciliation. Suad says to the paper, I've forgiven those who did me wrong. The committee from Al-Azhar starts efforts to contain the crisis of Al-Minya, and the National Council for Women forms a fact-finding mission. To tackle the same issue from another newspaper, from another daily, it's Al-Yawm Al-Saba, this time where we continue to read. Egypt in the village of Al-Karam arresting 5 new suspects in Al-Minya. The Ministry of the Interior were pursuing 12 others. Delegations from Al-Azhar, the church, and the parliament visit the village, and in a statement, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi gave his directives to all the concerned bodies to take all necessary procedures and measures to restore public order, keep citizens safe. The head of a state stressed that criminals and culprits responsible for the attack in the city should be held responsible and put on trial. Ma'am, this has nothing to do with sectarian strife. I found that those are culprits, thugs, criminals by any means. They have nothing. This has nothing to do with a religion, whatever it is. But let me ask you about how we have managed the issue. It's not going to be the traditional reconciliation. If those criminals are not going to be put on trial, then there is something wrong. But there is the performance, whether of the leadership or from the religious authorities. If you want to elaborate on that.
In fact, it's not sectarian strife because Muslim families saved Christian families. But there is something wrong in the religious speech that must be tackled, and must be tackled very quickly, because this is the true danger to the unity of Egypt. And these people who burned the houses of the Christians and did all these crimes, they must not only be imprisoned, they must pay for the houses to be built, and they must pay what we call in Arabic diyah, or compensation. They must pay a lot of money, so that anyone who thinks again of doing similar thing will put in mind, will put in mind that he is going to pay dearly for this. And the state must be very harsh with those criminals, in fact.
Ma'am, regarding what you're talking about, already President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi gave his directives that all the damaged buildings are going to be to be reconstructed, and the country or the state is going to pay all the expenses.
But the state must not pay. These people must pay, in fact.
I don't think that they are going to have enough money, but this is another story. Here, it's the dignity of the Egyptian woman. Here, it's the way we should deal with that, because she is a 70-year-old lady, and she said that I've forgiven them. But this is not only your right, ma'am. You are one of our mothers, and if you say that you have forgiven all of them, we have not.
Yes, the state must not forgive them. Yes, the state must not forgive them, of course.
Amen to that, ma'am. And on behalf of all Egyptians, to Mother Suad Thabit, we apologize. Taking you to Al-Masri Al-Yawm, where we read. Starting the analysis of the Greek evidence in the plane crash disaster, a French vessel to start searching for the black boxes within hours. And Al-Yawm Al-Saba is tackling the same issue of the plane crash. To determining the site of the guidance apparatus of the plane, the search teams are nearing the black boxes of Egypt's airplane. and rallies in support of the victims of the plane in Alexandria. Two important French firms are now joining the search team.
And the French Navy too.
The French Navy started
Yes.
from the beginning.
Yes.
I mean, those are two private companies specializing in the
Detecting.
wreckages, in the
Yes.
wreckage or the
Yes.
debris.
Yes.
And here, this is another kind of cooperation, another kind of an evidence or a proof how much we do have such
Good
deeply
relations,
rooted
yes.
good relations,
Yes.
to the extent that we do have this kind of assistance from our allies.
And this is what's targeted. It was meant that relations between Egypt and France must be hit and hit severely.
Yeah.
The same that happened between Egypt and Russia,
Yeah.
and between Egypt and Italy.
Italy.
Whenever we approach some country and there is support from this country and through cooperation between Egypt and this country, something suddenly happens. Why did it happen, especially to the Russian plane? Why did it happen that Regini's corpse appeared in the same day when an Italian minister was here negotiating deals with Egypt?
With delegations from
Yes.
50 businessmen from different
Yes,
companies.
and of course they withdrew when this happened. Why this is happening with France? To hit relations between France and Egypt, because they are cooperating on many aspects and now on peace with Israel. France has an initiative, Egypt has an initiative. No one is allowed to deal with initiative except the United States. And it began with Israel refusing the French initiative and having a very bad answer to peace initiatives by bringing Avigdor Lieberman as a defense minister for Israel. Even Israeli ministers are leaving for this.
Yeah.
For the Israeli government turning to the right and against peace.
Yep, and there are many other differences or divisions, to be accurate, are now
And
taking
in fact,
place
it's all-
inside the Israeli cabinet with the resignation of a second minister, which took place yesterday.
And
the
in fact,
Minister
all
of
this is
Environment.
connected with what's happening in the region and what's happening to Egypt. Because just in
Yeah.
the morning, I was watching France 24 and watching Syrian people evacuated and fleeing fight between Daesh and other groups. And I was saying that this is the target. Egyptian army was just a very big obstacle
on the way
to those enemies, and they will never stop trying to target Egypt. And I think they will never be able to have what they aim at, to have their target.
Never, inshallah, never. And simply as you were talking about the so-called coincidence,
Yes.
and how exactly when the Italians were here, Regini's body was found, how when Russia expressed a deep cooperation between Egypt, between Cairo and Moscow, whether militarily or on the economic front or whatever, the Russian plane took place. And exactly when Grand Imam of Al-Azhar and Imam
Was in
Al-Akbar,
France,
Sheikh Ahmed
yes.
Taib, now in Vatican in France in a tour which is historic by any means. What happened in Al-Minya happened
yes,
in Al-Minya.
of course.
From Al-Ahram front page we read, Al-Tayyib in his meeting with the head of the French Senate, we are intended to uproot the extremist ideologies. The Grand Imam of Al-Azhar and Chairman of the Muslim Sages Council, Sheikh Ahmed Tayyib, continued his visit to France on Friday. He also met with the chief of the French parliamentary group concerned with combating Daesh, member with the French National Assembly, Jean-Frédéric Poisson. The meeting touched on means of combating the terrorist group, curbing the flow of French extremists joining Syria and Iraq. Also, the Grand Imam reviewed efforts by top religious institute, the top Islamic Sunni institution, Al-Azhar, to counter terror ideologies through organizing training sessions for Al-Azhar preachers. Al-Tayyib also met with a number of Muslim Arab ambassadors in Paris, pressing for the important role that they can play in spreading moderate Muslim thoughts across European countries and particularly in France. Less than 2 months ago, also Sheikh Ahmed Al-Tayyib was in the Bundestag in Germany, where he had similar tour and similar talks. And in between, there was Nigeria. Before that, there was Indonesia. I think this is the very first time the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar had such tours, taking him from Asia to Africa to Europe to practice the real role of Al-Azhar, spreading the right image of Islam. How do you see this, ma'am?
In fact, this is very important, but there is something else that is very important too, that's preparing what we call dua, preparing religious people, religious clerks to let people understand what's true Islam, to have a brainwash for these people who listened for a long time for extremist religious
preachers.
They are not clerks, religious preachers who call for killing, who call for taking the money of the other party, whoever he is. Even if this other party is Muslim, there's no problem with them. They want his money, they want his life, and they say that this is permitted. This is what Al-Azhar must face. In the smallest village in Egypt, inside Egypt and outside Egypt, there is a very important role, because we have a flow of people coming from Europe, even from Europe. They are living in Europe and enjoying the life in Europe, but they want the Islamic State. Why do they go to Europe to live there if they want the Islamic State?
Because they have nothing to do with Islam, ma'am.
Of course, they have nothing to do with Islam, and they don't understand what is Islam. Islam is very, very refined system that teaches people how to live together, how to be tolerant, how to defend each other. And this true Islam was in Minya when Muslim people defended their Christian people, and this was not the first time. I remember that in 1977, when there was something like that, and in Sharabiya there was a problem between Christians. It was portrayed as a problem with Christians, but a Christian friend at this time told me that Muslim families were the defense of their Christian neighbors. We always had this feeling inside us, we are one thing. There is nothing called Christianity and Islam. We are all Egyptians.
We are all Copts. From Al Masri Al-Yawm front page, we continue to read. Ethiopia says it's not our problem that some say the dam shall harm them. Addis Ababa said the project is a reality that cannot be changed. Ethiopia announces completing 70% of the dam, and the Minister of Information says it's not our problem who would be harmed from the dam. I don't know if these are responsible statements to be said by the Information Minister of Ethiopia, but what should be our reaction?
In fact, we must not forget that Netanyahu is going to Ethiopia, and that Israel played a great role behind the building of this dam. And in fact, this is left to the political leadership. We cannot say what the political leadership must do with Ethiopia, but this is a vital problem.
National security.
Yes, and national security for Egypt. There must be an answer, but it's not just an answer from the media. It must be a reasonable answer from the leadership.
The allies of today, maybe they were the enemies of yesterday and vice versa.
Yes, there is no eternal enmity or friendship in politics.
Even if a country was the main reason behind the killing of 140,000 of another country?
Yes.
This is exactly
even-
what happened with the historic visit by American President Barack Obama to Japan and to visit Hiroshima and to say that he's not going to apologize for what Harry Truman did. The president says we are aiming at a world free of nuclear weapons. I don't know how. And Obama heals the wounds of Japan and embraces the victims of the American atomic bomb in Hiroshima.
It's not enough to kiss and rub and be so hypocritic in being emotional or showing that he is emotional to these people whose life was destroyed
Damaged
by the American bombs. Tens of thousands were killed and tens of thousands were harmed by these bombs. And I once read on the American Army's magazine that whenever they have a new weapon, they must wage a war but outside the United States to try this weapon.
test.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they tested
cannot
this
help
weapon
it. Yes.
very far from the United States, and it's very easy after all these years to come
But
and
they found an
say,
excuse for them, man.
Don't
They
be
said
angry.
What happened in Pearl Harbor was an excuse for them to do whatever they like, even with the civilians. But this was not the case. As you've kindly mentioned, they couldn't help testing the nuclear bomb
yes, of course.
with the mushroom shape.
And they are not
Yeah.
this very human rights country that is all the time attacking other countries, Egypt, China, or any other countries, human rights, and they know nothing about human rights, in fact.
At least they are not practicing human rights. Ma'am, thank you very much for being with us. Thank you very much for your input. Inshallah, next Saturday is going to be our last before the holy month of Ramadan. We hope that it's going to come in with all prosperity and welfare. Dr. Hala Enara, our political analyst, thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Right after the short break, I'm going to be back with more, the remaining part of the breakfast show. Stay tuned only on Nile TV International.